Go for CEO channel. This is John the Bomb. Building others means business. And just like my acronym of the name that I use, my persona, these two are helping you in your business to avoid crisis, to work through those things. And they are coming out with a book. It's actually out already. I was talking to Adele and Chip offline here, but Convince Me from the Convincing Company. Chip, Adele, co-authors, co-founders. Excited to have you guys on. Thank you so much for coming on to the Go for CEO channel. How are you guys?
Good. How are you?
Great. Thank
Awesome,
you, John.
awesome. Super exciting. I mean, it's kind of neat. Mostly had entrepreneurs, CEOs, founders of companies, a few sprinkled in intrapreneurs, people that work inside of a company and really have that, go for CEO mindset. But love to have you guys on. Read a little bit about kind of what you're doing. I do want to give you the just due that's coming to you because audience, Go for CEO, these guys are really special. They're doing business with Fortune 500 companies like Lockheed Martin, Samsung, SAP, Deutsche Bank, and many, many more. As crisis communications experts, they anticipate what's next for you. All right. In fact, there's one CEO that said everything that Chip and Adele said not only happened, but actually happened, right? So the whole crisis, we were always 3 steps ahead because of these two incredible people. So we're going to have a great journey about the communications company, right? The Convincing Company, sorry. And then also the book, Convince Me, that's out right now. And they'll share with you where to go to get the book. But give us a little bit of the background, Adele, Chip. What is, kind of the mindset behind how you guys started the company? And then obviously what led to this incredible book to put out there in the marketplace?
Chip, do you want to go first?
Go ahead, Adele.
Okay. So prior to meeting Chip, I had a communication agency, a public relations agency for about 15 years. And I had about 15 to 20 staff at any given time. And I love that. That was great. But I thought it was time for a change after doing that for 15 years and all of the HR related things and, lack of actually doing the thing that I really love to do. I decided that I was going to close that shop and go out and do something different, do more of a training company, more of a a different sort of type of company. And I was still trying to find out where I wanted to go with the company. And I went to an entrepreneurial dinner that was put on by a mutual friend of ours. And I met Chip and I was like, wow, I think my crisis background and PR background could really benefit with somebody with Chip's background as a former FBI hostage negotiator and special agent. I just thought his take on how crisis communications works, public relations situations like this, reputation, saving reputations, that he would have a totally different perspective. And when we started talking, we just totally, when we chatted, we realized that we came at it from different fields and different perspectives, but the end result was still pretty much the same. And we started working together and really haven't stopped. So we've been working together for 4 years after that to start the Convincing Company.
Breaking bread is such a secret in life, right? I know over the last 3 years, especially the first couple years from COVID, people have been yearning to get out there and just get out to networking events, get out to dinners. So I think that's a big clue, Go for CEO community, that you just heard. Two people that were kind of in different areas of an industry, break some bread, get to know each other, and all of a sudden find magic. So Chip, anything to follow up on that from Adele's?
Yeah, what was interesting for me was when Adele started talking and I was seeing, all right, this I understand. I get crisis communications, crisis comms and crisis in general is something the FBI is set up to do, right? It's kind of our stock and trade. Big crisis, big troubles, big investigations. So when we started talking, and Adele was asking me about how I, viewed different items, different business scenarios, different things that I experienced in the FBI. We were starting to figure out, well, I was coming at it from a perspective that had a huge framework around, right? Lots of processes, lots of procedures on how to work and navigate. Adele was able to ask me pointed questions, pull out different ideas and themes and processes that she said, you know, this is perfect for business. This makes a lot of sense. And we can put down what you have in your head as an investigative mode, and we can switch it around for business, which was just a game changer for me and how I understood the process. And now we apply that to businesses that we work with.
Yeah, and John, the other thing, really quickly too, you know, when I handled one of my first crises with Chip, it was such a different experience because, you know, I'd handled so many crises before Chip, right? And, you know, and when he came on the team, one of the things that was just so critical about his addition was when I was sitting there giving the client like the details, like, here are the next 5 things you need to do. And by the way, you need to do these things quickly. Chip was able to come in and analyze how people received the news and what they had to do and how they had to process it and what management was going to go through. And on the other side of the crisis, we had people going, thank you so much. You really saved our company. You really saved our reputation. And they actually enjoyed the experience. Whereas before, I think I just made them do what they need to do. And listen, I solved a lot of crises, don't get me wrong, but I'm not so sure the client enjoyed it as much as when you have someone who is empathizing the whole way through, checking in on your emotional state, like figuring out how to convince people really to do what it is you want them to do, which was a missing piece before, I think. And that's what Chip brought to the table. That was kind of fun. I'm like, when I'm, you know, I've got a board of directors, there's 40 people on the call. Chip's watching everybody's response as I give the 5 steps and what to do in the crisis. And then, you know, I'm on step 2 and one person really hated step 2 and they were a major decision maker. And I didn't notice because I'm just given the script of what to do next, right? So it was really a valuable asset for the company and for, you know, for what we did, the Chip's analysis of people.
No, what a complete dynamic duo, right? I love it that you really identified that. And it's interesting because from within, you were having a little bit of a crisis, kind of wanting to make a pivot, changing the way that you were doing things. You meet Chip, he has this other expertise, and together sounds like you guys really kind of were like nitrous and glycerin. So really, really awesome stuff. So walk us through those beginning times of just kind of understanding how you were going to collaborate. A lot of times on the Go for CEO channel, we talk to partners sometimes that, you know, the founder had one decision and then they brought in a different one and there was kind of some dynamics. So what were some of the ways that you brought in those SOPs, right? Those standard operating procedures that Chip already had kind of lined up in the way his mind worked from the FBI perspective. But then you've been running a business and now you bring in kind of a partnership type scenario. What were some of those initial kind of 90-day dynamics?
Chip?
Yeah, so what the whole thing was, hey, I do crisis comms and I've also done PR, but you know, I really want to focus in on crisis comms and training. So how is it that we're going to, you know, meld what it is that I do and you do and make it such a thing that people would be crazy not to take us up on? And that was the drive. The drive was to create excellence within crisis comms and immersive training. And so it was about developing IP around that. And Adele, it comes up with an idea a minute. We can't capture all the ideas that she has that are just brilliant business ideas in a day. I truly mean that. So we are focused in right now, and what we've had a lot of fun doing was developing the IP around the immersive training. And for the book that we just wrote that you mentioned, Convince Me, that Adele's holding up for those of you who can't see. And so we came up with ideas like forensic listening, right? And what we say around that, John, is that words leave clues. And so whenever you're in a conversation with somebody, you should be tracking some key indicators with them so that it's not lost. You know, so much of our conversations, to be honest, we're lazy in. right? We're meeting with a client, we're meeting with this, another partner in the firm or whatever it is. And we're just, tossing ideas here and there or exchanging thoughts, but we're not tracking it in a thoughtful, methodical way. So one of the things in our book is that we tell people, listen, when you take notes in a meeting or when a conversation with somebody, you should be also tracking what we call the four quadrants. So in the four quadrants, we say there is theme development. So we ask, people draw up those quadrants at the top of the page somewhere where they can keep track and say, all right, what themes is the person, the speaker, the client, whoever I'm speaking with, what are they touching on? And then another theme is going to be what emotion is present when they're speaking. And where is it that they attach most of the emotion to, and why is that? So you want to keep running track of that. Another part of the quadrant is what is it that their voice is saying? Their voice, their pitch, their tone, their cadence. All things that you want to track that I was, invested in as a hostage negotiator to understand where that person was and their journey with me. How was I interpreting that? And it's the same thing for any meeting. So if you're tracking their voice with the emotion, with what it is, the theme that they're saying, and you add in another, if you can see the person, what we call body position. And we differentiate body position from body language, John, in this way. Body language is static, right? It's all about what, person sitting with their arms folded. That means generally they're disengaged. Where is their eye? For us, this is about movement, because we are people in constant motion. So you're going to watch that person. Are they rocking back and forth as they're talking to you? Well, that's an indication that maybe they're on to something else. Maybe they want to get out of there. Are they bladed, from you, or are they squarely facing you? Do they unball and open up their hands? Another indication of tension or stress. How are they fidgeting and why? So you attach those four things to something that is an important theme to them. And what we suggest, John, and this is where it gets to be critical, is that most people, won't do this, won't go to this level of effort. And if they take the next step, which is what we call the reach back. And the reach back is when, after you've had like a couple weeks of space from that meeting, from that conversation, you see that person again, because again, we are in constant contact with different people, and we're going to run into the same people all the time. You go to that person, say it's your, a client or your senior staff, and you say, you remember that moment when you said it's so important to increase engagement in our company? And I thought about the ways that you talked about that, and the four things. And I wanted you to know that I used the third thing that you said. And I just decided I was going to commit myself to it for the next 2 weeks. And I did that. And here are the results of that. I just wanted you to know it made an impact on me. Now, can you imagine if you had a dedicated strategy to do that every time to the key decision makers in your life, to the most important clients on your roster? Can you see how that relationship would deepen, how that relationship would evolve, and that people would see you as the go-to person whenever it was that they needed services that you offered? So it's been a game changer. We did this with one company, John, and they've decided to use it throughout their entire company. It's been that big of an impact on them. So yeah, to answer your question, it's developing the IP around what I've learned, what Adele's learned, and now we have this whole immersive training thing, and I'd like Adele to talk about that.
Sure. So the immersive learning experience, and that also came together when we first met, John, too. Chip invited me to a hostage negotiation scenario that he was doing at a startup in New York City, and I was like, oh man, this is going to be really cool. He's like, yeah, come, and I have a role player, and we get 6 people around a table, and and we go through all these things, and I'm like, okay, I'm super interested in seeing how this works, and so I went, and the whole time I just was thinking, like, these are the following ways this applies to business. And oh my gosh, there's so many other takeaways and different things and different ways in which entrepreneurs can learn from this. And anybody in communications and anybody in any real field, the business applications to this are incredible. And then we started to think about, like, what are the business applications of, interviewing people, interrogating people? What does that, like, I mean, that has cross-pollination, right? Like, how about investigations, developing sources, finding clues, like uncovering information? I mean, we are really in corporate America, if you really think about it, we are using much of the same skills the FBI used, and Chip learned, and Quantico, and all these other immersive learning experiences. But we're sort of taught by, training by fire, christening by fire in a lot of ways in corporate America. We're not given the opportunity to go into these situations that are true crime based and then have the business application go, okay, we know this was super interesting. We know, we've all watched hundreds of, like, shows on true crime. Like, how many hours of your life are like, would you get back if you, like, took all the time you watched the TV on true crime shows? And then, hey, you know what? You can actually learn something in business from these things. And that's when we really, the immersive training concept really took off for us. We were like, okay, we've got to do this. We've got to get it out there.
So you bring up some interesting points, right? As you're speaking, I'm really kind of challenging the immersive, reality of how you're saying it, because I think in business, right, like you said, a lot of us are judged quarterly. You get earnings reports,
Right.
those types of things from a high level. Even if you're a small business owner, you got to have some KPIs that people have to be hitting, so that on a monthly basis, your financial reports can look good. If you want to go do business with a banker, as an example, and those types of things. So I'm just very curious. The book itself, will our audience and people that buy it take out some nuggets that they can then transform their time lapsing of that, right? Because maybe from an FBI perspective, you'll have 3, 6, 9, 10 months or 12 months to investigate something. But in a business, they need to pivot pretty quickly. What are your guys' thoughts of how the book can help, our SMEs out there?
Sure. So I think the book is super applicable to anyone in business. And we have strategies and techniques that can help you immediately. Like, one of them is this idea of convincing, right? Like, how do you convince anyone of anything? Really, the truth is they convince themselves, but you have to have good strategies to bring someone along, right? And that's what business is really all about. You're bringing someone along, you're helping them buy a product, a service, an idea, a concept, right? You're helping them buy into you. I mean, the best business people, the most convincing business people in the world do that seamlessly, or so it appears. But actually, there are specific techniques in the book we give people to use and immediately apply. Like, one example is this idea of, certainty is the biggest barrier to convincing anyone of anything. Certainty of their belief, certainty of your belief, right? And so when you first start out trying to convince someone of something, you start out with, most of us, we would start out with our strongest point first, right? We go out, we go for the jugular, right? We're like, this is why I'm so smart. This is why I know more about this than you. These are all the facts and data points and features and benefits of why I know more than you know. And what do you think you do when you do that for somebody, like, neurologically? What you do is you just harden their pathways, right? Like, whatever their neurological pathways were before, they're like, I'm going to dig into whatever belief I have. I'm not going to hear anything you have to say. Thank you very much. And they tune you out, right? So you start with your strongest point and you think you're winning, right? The righteousness of your beliefs. You're like excited. So the other person's like, nope, I don't want to hear another word. And they tune you out, right? You already go to their latitude of rejection. Our book teaches you that you should start at a point of agreement and then move people along, right? And you move people along by doing something called fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right? You use fear, like, hey, like, maybe you have a fear that you might not know everything you think you know about this topic, or maybe there's some uncertainty in your belief, but you don't really want to admit it. Well, it's my job to kind of to get you to think about that differently. And maybe you have some doubt about what you believe. It's my job to place that in front of you so that you start to maybe cognitively, you start going from an ice cube that's solid and frozen, and you're melting them a little bit and you're moving them along, but you have to have the discipline. And this is what most of us lack. You have to have the discipline to stop and get them to change their own mind, right? And you do that by giving them just enough information, what we call the convincing cliffhanger, for them to go look up information and find out what they truly believe. You've planted the seeds. Convincing really is a long-term strategy, but something all of us can employ. But if you go out with your strongest point first, you're never going to convince anyone of anything.
Chip, do you want to follow up on that? That was pretty
Yeah.
dynamic right there.
You know, and it's so much the case when I was doing high-level interrogations or critical interviews, right? The skill set transcends and goes back and forth from hostage negotiations to those kind of interviewing situations. And it's the same kind of methodology, is that what you're doing is, let's say a person is holding back on information that you need.
Chip,
Yeah.
tell John the cartel guys.
Oh, okay.
So great.
So
It's so
Hey,
this
I'm Colombian, so we got to be
You're
careful.
Colombian.
I'm half Colombian, yeah.
You'll like this story then.
It's funny because when so just a total side note, but
Yes.
all my childhood, my friends would know we'd go to Colombia. And then all of a sudden when I got a little bit older, they'd be like, hey, did you bring it back? And I'm like jokingly, obviously. And I'm like, what do you think? All of us go to Colombia just to pick up merchandise? So
I'm Italian, so some of those stereotypes apply on my end. Too.
Totally. So sorry, Chip, go ahead.
No. That's that. Thank you for that. So yeah, there was a time when I was asked to go along with somebody to help him in an interview with a member of a cartel who was actually a enforcer for the cartel. He was in prison, federal prison, because he had 8 bodies on him, right? So he wasn't getting out anytime soon. But the reason we were talking with him, wanted to speak with him, was because his information, his experience base would help them in this investigation that they were currently working on a rival cartel. So we go in there, and the idea with prisons and people that are institutionalized for a while, it becomes transactional. Their life is all about transaction. I'll give you this if you give me that. So going into this, we knew we couldn't do anything about this guy's time, but what could we do? And so we were thinking about different things that we could talk to this guy about that might loosen him up to share information with us. All right. So we go in, sit down, waiting for this guy to arrive. Prisons take a while to process people through. It's a nightmare. But once this guy comes in, John, you would think he was out of central casting. I mean, his hair was perfectly, combed. It was not a hair was out of place. His jumpsuit looked like it had been pressed that morning. I mean, he was very impressive, and it was clear that we were there for his meeting, not for us to take his, right? So sat down and we talked about why we're there and so forth. And then we started with, what is it that we can offer you? And as I started talking, John, he picked a spot above my right shoulder and started staring. And I just thought, all right, this is his way, whatever. And so I said, listen, there's nothing I can do about your time. Your time is your time. That's been decided by a judge. However, maybe you would like a better prison cell. Maybe the one you're in right now isn't the best. Maybe you would like to move that. Would that be something you were interested in? Nothing. Guy's still silent. All right. So I mentioned, hey, we know that you were raised in another part of the country. What if we moved you to another prison that was closer? You could have more friends and family visit you. Nothing. Above right shoulder. I said a number of other things, right? And we're getting nowhere. So I'm saying, look, obviously this is a waste of your time. You're not interested in talking to us. That's a shame, because you could have helped us, and I think we could have helped you. And I'm putting my stuff together, right? Getting up to leave. And I said, I'm thinking, all right, as I was thinking about what he did, how he moved within the organization, every time he put out a hit on somebody, every time he eliminated competition, every time he made a move against a rival organization, it increased their coffers of their cartel, that they benefited every time this man made a move. So my last words to him were this, John. I said, listen, I can't condone anything you've done. I said, but from a purely business perspective, I have to say respect, because every time you moved, you helped your organization. And I got it, put my stuff together and got to leave. He said, hold up. He said, now ask me your questions. And in that moment, I realized my mistake, where I had completely dropped the ball, was he didn't want anything I had to offer. He didn't care about a sale or anything like that. He wanted the respect of what he wanted to be viewed as. And that was his, what we call the unstated narrative, right? In his mind, he was a business consultant. In his mind, he knew he had an expertise that that was of value. And if he got known as that, which is what he wanted, his stock and trade now was, I can offer advisement on how to increase, the cartel's business. So he then became very willing once we gave him that point of view of respect. And I found that was his unstated narrative, the thing that he wasn't going to say, but you have to unlock in a client situation whenever you're dealing with somebody.
It's so incredible, right? When you think about some of the sales videos, trainings out there, and you're meeting with a client or you're meeting at their place, how you act in that scenario, right? Walking into someone's office, noticing around the boat, maybe the little figurine boat, or the picture of him and the son, or her and her daughter, whatever, all those types of things. It's interesting. And what captivated me was, I started thinking respect when you were kind of going at the end of the story, but the sense that someone would walk into that type of scenario with his, jumper super pressed, every hair perfect. Gosh, I mean, it totally relates to how he wanted respect first, right? That's really, really interesting. So awesome stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's so cool. I mean, your background along with Adele and the PR side and mixing those things together, what a cool dynamic. So, when you guys are putting this book together, has it been more for yet another piece of IP? Obviously, you have some tools and things that people are going to learn from it, but how does it work with your business? Are you engaging with clients and now being able to actually give a physical book? And is that part of the learning curve for them to work with you? Well, how are you guys using the book tool?
I think one of the things writing a book does, and I come from a career in journalism. The first 6 years of my career were in journalism. I think one of the things writing a book does for anybody who owns a business, and I would recommend this for anybody who owns a business, is it makes what you believe and know, and the processes and the methodology so much clearer. Because when Chip and I were writing the book together, right, it was like, well, what do you believe about this? And hey, what do you think about this? And what's the most recent neuroscience on this? And what's our perspective on it? Writing a book, it's 300 pages. I mean, it is a labor of love to write a book, right? It teaches you to clarify what it is you want to tell the world about what it is as a business person, but it also allows you to get clarity around what's important. And I think that is one of the best things about writing a book. It's like, it makes it super clear about, like, these are the things we believe in. These are the things we want our clients to know and learn. This is how we know we're going to help your business. And here's a million case studies in the book on how it helped other people. And all that does is it just gives more social proof. It gives more authority. It's more commitment and consistency. Like, it's not like Chip and I are, hey, we're, business partners for 4 years, and, we're not going to know each other in 10. We wrote a book together. We're in it. We're gonna keep
the book.
going. Yeah, we wrote the book, right? I mean, and so I think it has so many clarifying factors in business. It's really, like, I think one of the best things that you can do.
I love it. What do you think, Chip?
Yeah, that's it. It's when people read it, and we're always, we go back, because there was a point when you're going through the editing process and going back over things and finding the commas, the asterisks, and so forth. You're like, I'm so done with this, right?
I've read the book 100 times. Yeah.
Yeah. And now that we know it's out, we're revisiting, we're going through some of the chapters and so forth. We're like, this is really good. You forget how, you know, how impactful this stuff was, because we know this stuff works. We've used it in both of our, you know, lives. You know, me as a hostage negotiator and agent, and Adele in PR crisis comms. So it's just so valuable. And I think when people read that, they pick it up immediately, because that's the perspective we get. It's like, this can help you immediately. And anybody that's striving, you know, to get that next promotion or to change roles in their company, to be seen differently, it's like, how good do you want to be? It's there for you. You can pull it out if you practice the stuff, if you implement it. You are going to increase your convincing ability. You're going to be able to be seen differently, and you're going to increase your effectiveness, just because you're now seeing it through another person's eyes. And when you can make that shift and make it about them, I mean, the sky's the limit.
I like that. You know, it's making me think also, when you think about when you're building your processes, you're building your job role descriptions, you're starting to hire people. You know, the act of writing it down, the act of going through that simulation, that mind preparedness. All right, you're actually convincing yourself, okay, here's what I really want my, you know, account managers to do, what I want my business development people to do, what I want my HR people to do. And you start to grow that dynamic, right? And there's some great tools out there. And this book can truly be that, to implement it within it. Is the book intended more for C-suite, or could it be, you know, mid-level managers? Where can it work the best, or does it have a broad appeal?
As a marketer, this is like one of those questions where I hate to answer it like this, because I should like smack myself on the hand to answer. It really is for everybody, right? I mean, it
Okay.
really, like, it's a broad target market, because well, let me explain it like this, right? By the time we read a theory and we put it in the book, it's one of the first things that you read when you read the book. It's called Judgment and Decision Making, right? And it's all about how kids from the age of 6 are already super convincing. And I have an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old, and I can tell you, they are good negotiators, right? They are
Yeah.
good at convincing. They really are. By the time we're age 6, we already understand things like perceived value, supply and demand, right? Like we get all these really complicated processes about how to convince someone of something. The trouble is, John, most of us kind of stop there, right? Like, we're literally like, we have a couple of advanced skills, we use them throughout our life. And when we come across somebody who is not convinced, does not like us, does not think we're the authority, we just go, that guy's a jerk. And I'm going to move on to somebody who will like me. Instead of thinking like, hey, maybe I need to change my skills, my approach, the way I look at things, and learn new advanced convincing skills to get more of what I want, both in business and in life. This applies both in your personal and your professional life. You know, the idea of being validated by someone, right? The guy, the cartel story, that's really what it is. It's targeted validation. The guy wanted to be validated for his business acumen. When you can identify what someone wants to be validated about, your ability to be convincing, persuasive, influential in any situation increases tenfold, right? So if you just get the book and you get 5 techniques, you're going to be 5 times more convincing than when you read it previously, right? And we do have some stuff in there that is super cool, never been talked about in this way before, like predictive statements. Like, it's so fun. Like, some of the stuff in the book, it will surprise you.
Nice. Chip?
Yeah, one of the things I think is, you know, who's this book for? It's for strivers. It's for people that want to make a substantial leap in their lives. And that's why I love talking about it, because I know it works. I know that, you know, most people, like Adele was saying, they have 1 or 2 go-to convincing techniques. And that's really what it is, right? It's convincing. We don't negotiate every day. But what we do every day, many times a day, is convince. We have to convince people of the value that we bring. We have to convince people that we can take on this project and we're worth the investment of it. So if if we do like one or two things that we can add to someone's toolbox, to their quiver, and say, hey, instead of just, you're trying for getting this client to sign and they're just pushing against it. And you're like, I've done my two things, right? I've done the two things I've always done before, and it's a no-go. Well, instead of saying that person's just, an idiot, try that thing that we're going to give you. Try it out, and put it into practice. Practice it, utilize it. And when you need it, pull it out and see if that will be a difference maker. Can you imagine if you're at a critical deal juncture, whether it's a critical hire, whether it's bringing another client, and you try that one new thing where everything else has failed and it works, oh my gosh, right? Now you're in the game. Now you're in the conversation. Now you're sitting at the table instead of looking in from the outside.
And John, like, let us ask you, like, I'm sorry, Jim, let us ask you, like, what are some of your like favorite convincing techniques or things that you use? I mean, obviously, you're a podcaster, you're a business owner, or you've been doing this a long time. Like, what's a good go-to strategy that you use that you don't think most people utilize?
Yeah, no, hey, I appreciate you flipping it on me. A lot of times when I'm sitting down, right now I'm in a commercial bank, so I do a lot of acquisition finance, right? So there's a part of what I do is really talking to people that want to become entrepreneurs and need capital, right? They want to buy $1 million business, a 3 million. We just closed on a $4.5 million business last week. Before Thanksgiving, it was really cool. It was Wednesday, did a LinkedIn live video, but it was interesting because I met this gentleman that was a COO of a company. He had tried to convince his higher ups, right, the owners of the company, hey, give me 10% equity. I busted my butt for the last 4 years. I'd like 10% equity so that I have a stake in the game. And they said no after about 3 months or so of talking about it, right? So he and I actually meet at a networking event, start talking. And as you said, I was just trying to listen. My biggest, I guess, convincing points is once I have the hook of where your pain points are, I try in my sales, let's say videos or training or whenever I've had teams, I try to say, hey, look, if you're not listening, and this is a cliche, but if you're not listening twice as much as you're talking, you're ruining your opportunity, right? You said at the beginning of this video, I come in with my most impactful, sale, but you've just turned off the whole audience, right? Instead of in this situation, when I'm convincing someone, I'm really finding out where the pain points are. For this guy, as an example, he says to me, my pain is that my owners of the company that I worked so hard for as a COO and converted their EBITDA from X to 4 multiple, and I'm not getting anything for that. Man, I want to go buy my own business.
Been there.
Right. So,
Yeah.
so once I had that, I was actually at a pretty big event, and I meet this guy, and he was being talked to by many different people. Turns out that I was probably one of 6 capital opportunities that he could have gone with. And because another convincing is I take people to events. I break bread with them. We had an event at the Guaranteed Rate Field, which is where the White Sox play. And it was just a softball game, no sales, anything like that. It was just a softball game. And that endeared him to me even more. And 7 or 8 months later, we have a $4 million purchase of a company.
Gosh,
So to say what it is that I really get deep and sold into is finding out where the pain is, and then I ride that pain. I'm not shameful about telling you, hey, you shared with me that this hurts. So are we truly going after it? Because when someone ghosts me or I don't talk to someone, I go back right to the pain that I knew that was there. So that's kind of my thing. But hey, you guys are the experts, so let's get back to you. So hey, real quick.
That's so important, though. What you just said is really critical, right? I mean, like I think Chip, can you just speak? Because I mean, like Chip and I have worked together for so long. I know what he's thinking right now, or I think I know what you're thinking. Are you talking about the emotion, right? That he connected to the emotion. Is that what you're thinking about? Because that's what
and that's exactly right. We talk about the pain, and anytime you tap into somebody's emotion, finding that thing, it is the quickest way to bond. over an emotional experience. And that's why we use that in the bureau all day long, because we know that it is the quickest way to gain somebody's trust. It is the quickest way to eliminate all the crap that's in between and say, this is really what is of concern to me. This is the thing that is driving me nuts. I need help with this. And that's where you come in. That's when you connect to that person and they never forget it. And so, John, like you were saying, I mean, that guy is a friend for life. That guy is somebody that knows, all right, John gets me. He wants to be there with me. He wants to ensure that I'm going to make the right move. I'm going to make the right steps. Who do you want to reward in life like that? That person that that pulls the thorn out of the tiger's paw. That's who you want all day.
I gotta say, your story really is reminiscent of another of something that happened in my career. Right, I was working at a big agency, big ad agency. I had the big job. I had the corner office. Right, I was like really good at my job, and I had this big account. And the woman who I reported to, she just kind of hated me. I don't know why, but she did not like me. Like, I was really on her list, right? And my client at the time, she so enjoyed working with me that she called my boss's boss and said, I don't want her on the account anymore. I just want to work with Adele, which then made me even more of a target for this woman. And what she did was she wound up firing me, right? And it was like soul crushing. I was like, oh my God, I got fired from the big agency. What am I going to do? And I get a call from the client who worked at a Fortune 500 company, who was my client at the other firm. And she's like, did she just fire you? And I was like, she did, because of the call that you made, by the way. And she's just like, okay, we're giving you a contract. It's for $100,000. So literally, I started my agency with my first client being a Fortune 500 company because she saw the potential in me, right? Like, I think the thing that you talked about was, you said you saw pain. And I don't think you saw pain. I think you saw potential. And I think when somebody sees potential in you, that is, I think it just releases some level of need we all have, right? That we maybe didn't get from childhood, or we did get from childhood, but we want it validated. So many of us don't focus on someone else's potential. And when someone does, it just, like she started my career. I'm 18 years into having my own business because of that woman. She saw potential in me. And I think if all of us can go and see potential in others, they're going to see you as somebody that they admire, that someone they'll come back to for advice, that you can, you can really do so much for someone if you just see their potential. It's amazing.
No, I love that you described it that way, because it truly is that, right? In fact, it's funny, when we did the video of kind of a congratulatory video on Wednesday, I said to him, and about a week or two before, I had started telling some of my colleagues and teammates, I was like, this guy's like a young Elon Musk, because he was always 3 or 4 steps ahead. His thinking was just very dynamic, and it was one of the only clients over the last few years that I've been doing it. It made me think, man, this guy really has his stuff together. There's no way he's not succeeding. Now, he did have some partners in it for the capital raise, but it's interesting. He led the thing, and you're right. I mean, he kind of felt that he was in charge. He was finally going to get his chance, right? So it's believing in him. So awesome stuff. I think we could probably go 3 hours on this podcast, honestly, because I feel like there's so many different dynamics. We definitely want people to get the book, Convince Me, by Adele and Chip. Show that book. Awesome. So let's I want to go one little step further with the business, right? So I always share with people, hey, go with people that have some skin in the game. So I'll give an example. Right now I'm in commercial banking, right? So I'm an entrepreneur, along with the podcast and some of the entrepreneurial things that I'm doing. But I always say to a potential client, hey, one of the things that differentiates me when I do, after ask enough questions, I say, look, I've owned my own business, right? I get the 7, 10 spinning wheels that you have, right? You're in operations, you're in sales, you're in marketing, you're in HR today, you're in, oh man, this system broke down. All this stuff as an SME, right? Small, medium enterprise. So when you guys are building the convincing company, right? And then you get this book, what are some of the ways that you're using your own book within either your hiring practices, or what are you guys doing to then be able to use kind of the methodologies within it? Just a quick example, and then we'll go to our CEO ending of the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, Chip, do you want to go?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I would just say that the book shows that that we're here to stay.
Mhm.
And I think that's really what the book does, right? The book says we're here to stay, and it says to clients and to potential employees, you can read about our philosophy, and if you agree with it, then come on board. If you don't, probably not, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that's the freedom of it, right? And then also the same with clients. It's like, if you don't believe in studying people and listening to people and respecting people and seeing potential, we're probably not the firm for you. You know,
Mhm.
we're not. So I think it's kind of almost setting boundaries and saying, this is what we are, this is what we believe, this is what we want, the type of clients we want to mirror back. I think that's what a book does. I think that's how it ignites your business.
Awesome, awesome. Anything to add, Chip?
I think that, some of the things like you were talking about, John, how do you figure out who's a better hire, right? And I was talking to a friend of mine who recently sold his company for an obscene amount of money, and he said, Chip, how much do you deal with, this idea of interviewing and for, hiring? And I was like, yeah, that's one of the things we do. He goes, he said, when I was running the company, he said, any kind of hire that I thought of as critical, I sat in on. And he
Mhm.
said, it was exhausting. He said, and I probably shouldn't have done that, but I didn't have anyone that I felt had my experience based training that could do this like I could. And so I did it. He said, there's a lot of people out there that are struggling, trying to find and bring in that critical hire for their business, and they don't know the right questions to ask other than the typical tropes. Well, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And tell me about a difficult situation you've seen, and what are your greatest weaknesses, So the idea here, he said, if you give people these tools like are in your book, man, he goes, that's going to be a huge help. And so that's, one of the things that we're able to do as a result of our backgrounds is that, you know, it's so expensive to hire the wrong person.
Mhm.
So much better when you have a faith in the process of what it is you're looking for and how that person fits in and who they are. So again, we do practice what we preach. We use our own IP for sure.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. Look, I can go in about six other different directions. I know we only committed to an hour here, so I'd love to have you back on. One of the themes with Go for CEO channel is to have you on in 6 to 12 months and have a recap, conversation, understand kind of even in this perspective where the book is, what are some of the dynamics that you learned from it, how are you coming out with a second edition, blah, 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 all that type of stuff, and how it's affected your own company. So, but at the Go for CEO channel, we end with CEO. So client experience engagement. I used to call it employee engagement, but I really want to understand kind of how do people engage with, your company, and then also operational excellence. So let's hit the first one from either one of you or both. From a client experience, when people are engaging with the convincing company, they've read the book now, they want to engage. Obviously, they were referred by one of these Fortune 500 companies or another sizable company. How are they going through that client experience, that first initial steps at a high level, in your opinion?
Chip, do you want to go or do you want me to
Oh,
take
go
it?
ahead, Adele.
Okay. Well, one of the things I would say is I think they get a sense of the fact that we are going to see them through,
Mm.
right? We're going to see them through whatever it is they come to us for help on. And we really are invested in their success. And I would say that that's probably what people see immediately when they come to our company. Wouldn't you think so, Chip?
Oh, absolutely. You you're so much more confident. You have such a feeling of support, right? That's what we try to make sure that every client feels is that, we're not standing behind you, we're standing alongside of you. We
Mhm.
are collaborators with you in your success, whether that's salvaging your brand reputation whether that's bringing on, your next hire that's going to take your business to the next level, or for yourself on, hey, my team really needs this experience. We need to be able to think under stress and how to be most impactful in what we're doing in our next level venture. So yes, I agree with that wholeheartedly. Yeah.
What I would also say, Chip, just really quickly to add to that, John, because I think it's really important. Like, we worked with one client who, she came to us, she was in the middle of a crisis. It was really a tough situation. And no one on her whole entire team was validating anything she did well, right? Just were focusing on all the mistakes that led them to where they go. And I think that's one of the things we try to come in with any client, is give them the experience of feeling validated for what they did well. And I feel like so many consultants just don't do that. They're like, here are all the reasons why I'm smarter than you. Here's my diagnostic approach on why you're terrible. And here are all my recommendations that make me smarter than you. Like, there's this great Boss Baby episode, right? Where like there's the Boss Baby consultant and he's trying to take over the Boss Baby's job. And I'm like, that's how most people feel about consultants, right? They don't feel validated. And I see that that's such a missing component of what most consultants do. They just come in and they try to fix everything, and they don't say, these are the things you do well. As adults, we don't get that, like almost ever.
No, that's a huge part. In fact, it's making me think a recent client, they're growing, they're about 380,000 or so in gross revenue, which is a small business, but they have a component to one piece and then a component to the other. And they came up to me, and I gave them 2 books to read. I gave them a couple of things to do, but in the next meeting, this is a clue for me to be able to go back and go, here's the validations that I want you to know that you are doing well, and here's how I can help you moving forward. So I'm taking that away, Go for CEO community. So engagement, engagement is, I think, is such a missed part of how people work with someone, right? It could be from a vendor perspective. You guys had, either publishing or whatever, your employees. I want to be able to understand from a high level, just maybe 60 seconds, on how can people expect to engage with the convincing company and you two great authors.
Chip, is all you.
Yeah, so I think really what we offer is this idea of, you already have done great things, right? You're already moving in a direction, and some people just need that one piece of clarification. They just need, all right, we're in a crisis right now, or we're not sure about this brand strategy that we're moving toward, or my team needs to function at a higher level. What we do, like Adele was saying, is we identify what already are the strengths, and then it's so much of the game is about a millimeter correction, right, John? It's like you are 99.9% of the way there, and you just need one. Is you need the validation to say, hey, this is tried and true, and you're on the right track. Let's move it just a hair this way, and put all of our resources in this basket towards what we know is going to make you take flight. And that's the thing. It's like you bring us in, and it's really to support the effort that already existed and to make what is great even better. So that's really what we try and strive for every engagement.
Great. So the last one is operational excellence. When you think about the systems, the processes, you guys really kind of, dived into that part of it based on the book and the things that you brought to the table, Chip, and obviously the career of being an entrepreneur, Adele, that you had. So anything else that you could share from a co-author, co-founder, working together partnership scenario that you use in the operation sense? So is there any systems that you like? Is there any, do you use Monday or, anything like that comes to mind that allows you to run a really good, solid business?
Yeah, I mean, one of them is this idea of like keeping track of the decisions and the formats and frameworks that you've used in other gigs and other consulting things, right? Because a lot of times stuff comes around again. right?
Mhm.
And so what you want to do is just adapt the things. You want to make the things better all the time, but you also just want to adapt the frameworks that you know work, right? So with crisis situations, it feels like it is unique every single time someone comes to us, or they feel it's unique. And it's like, well, we've handled sexual harassment a bunch, and we've handled, a lot of these things are very familiar to us. We've handled brand crises, and we've handled social media hiccups and media issues and all this other stuff that is common to us because we experience it a lot,
Mhm.
uncommon to them, right? So we have a process that we follow to get people to where they want to go. And sometimes clients don't like to follow the process. They want to go, just give me the solve. Give me the solve, right? Give me the answer. And it's like, well, no, you have to go through the 5 other steps to figure out why the solve is what it is. And a lot of times you get pushback, especially when people are in like a dire situation. It's like, no, right? We've got to take them through the steps, or they don't value the end result.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things I would say is, don't reinvent the wheel. Figure out the things that have worked before for you, use them again, constantly update them, of course, but, use what works, find your baseline, find your basis for your business, and use those things consistently. And that's, I think, how you grow and scale.
Anything else, Chip?
I think the other thing to remember is that we're human, and anytime we're dealing with business scenarios, crisis situations, training, whatever it is to understand is that the human beings present their own issues. Everyone is bringing something else to the table. So it's not like, oh my gosh, I've never seen this before. We've seen it before. And it shows up again and again, whether, it's something that caused the crisis or the deal to fall through. There's reasons for it. And it can be, it's captured, it's understood. It's like Adele said, no need to reinvent this wheel. We actually know what the causes are, right? So it's helping that person get through that and understanding the ramifications. Like, look, you're not the first person that's ever made a mistake or felt this way, even though it's not you, right? We're the team that says, hey, don't worry about that. We're going to show you what's next. And in fact, one of the Adele's stock and trades is that she's able to show people, look, you do this successfully, you follow the steps we're going to give you, there's a good chance you're going to get an award at the end of this, right? So, and that's happened time and time again for her. So yes, I would remember the human condition hasn't changed. We're the same, right? It's just a matter of, can we learn from the foibles and the mistakes that are present.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point at the end there too, right? Is, from Think and Grow Rich to the latest book, right? Convince Me. A lot of the principles of the human nature are kind of the same, but when you take a different human being and how they look at it and how they strategize, or a different organization like FBI or your, former PR and the experiences and what you went through by that boss that didn't like you and then you get fired, like it adds value to the way that you put it on paper and then also interact with your clients. So awesome stuff. So how do they get the book? How do they interact with you? What if a company sees this, one of their leaders, and goes, man, I really want Chip and Adele to come into my organization and help us? How do they do that stuff with you guys?
Yeah, so head to convincingcompany.com, and it's the whole word, company.com. You look us up online. We're both on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, and we also have a webpage attached to this podcast that we do not have the name of right now, Sean, but we will get the listeners so they can go for some resources.
Nice. Awesome stuff. Well, hey, look, Chip, Adele, this has been a really cool interview. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on, sharing the book, sharing convincing company strategies and what they're doing out there. Go for CEO community. If you're not a part of the community, go ahead and subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify, on Amazon Music, on iHeartRadio, on YouTube, watching us, right? Subscribe to the channels, be a part of the movement. And we're going to have Adele and Chip over the next 6 to 12 months come back and give us a recap, 15-20 minutes. There'll also be some split things. I found a new tool out there talking about operations. I recently found a tool that's AI that is actually doing a lot of my splits for shorts, which will be cool to see what it comes up with for this particular video. But thank you so much again for coming on to the Go for CEO community.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Don.